Yeah, Farin here. I figured I'd make an introductory video. Um, yeah, you know, seems like a reasonable place to start. Not everyone has, been not certain I'll make any other videos, but in case I do, relatively recently re-emerged as a functional fronter, so may as well make an introductory video at this point. Yeah, so um, preferred pronouns. Assy, which as pronoun can be used in its singular form for pretty much any way you pronoun, or if you're uncomfortable using neopronouns, they them is acceptable. Yeah, so that's the basic pronoun stuff out the way. Yeah. In terms of correction stuff, I've been, there's been a pretty common part of our introductory videos, and I figure it can help people understand components, show the diversity potential within the system, all of that. Yeah, so it's not particularly attracted to people. Like, the potential is there. So, say Demi, probably. Um, yeah, the potential is there. I just want an emotional connection first. And to be honest, I don't know if I'm going to be invested enough to find that emotional attachment, but it's the potential is there in theory. So yeah, um, yeah. Anyway, so that's the boring, you know, kind of useful stuff. Kind of useful to explain for context, but whatever stuff out the way. So to point in more useful terms in some ways, I suppose. So I do find uh, relatively new to everything, so I'm just coming back into things. But I've found entertainment in Warhammer 40k, and yeah, I know, right? It's bad elements for the community and for the setting, and Games Workshop are problematic in a number of ways as a company. Right, none of it is perfect by any means. I recognise that fully, but dear lord, the excesses of the setting are especially in terms of the completely ridiculous and over the top darkness of large parts of it are refreshing. Right? It's a interesting look at just how bad things can truly be. Right? Okay, sure, things are likely to ever actually be as bad as portrayed in Warhammer 40k. Right? That's ridiculously bad, even by most, you know, even the worst predictions of how badly things are going to go rarely get to that level of bad, simply because a lot of it is just bad for impracticality. Is impractical is bad in an impractical way. Right? It does not make sense for things to be as bad as they are at times. Right? Things are bad for the sake of being bad, rather than for any actual practical reason. That does not make the setting not entertaining or not interesting to you. That is part of what makes it interesting and entertaining, is the ridiculous darkness of the whole thing. Is this perfect? No, of course not. Right? There are serious problems with this, with it as a setting, and parts of the community, not all of the community, but parts of the community are, you know, bad people in various ways. And yeah, some of the narratives, stories there can be used to justify some pretty terrible things if you look at them through a certain lens. Right? Stories do in and of themselves justify technological stagnation and effectively and a highly, and a highly controlled religious fascistic empire. I mean, they suggest that this is a good thing and the only way for humanity to survive, which is clearly horrific, and they they condemn technological advancement in various ways. Right, you look at the fall of the Elder as a story point. It condemns technological advancement, and especially what it especially condemns is technological advancement bringing about people giving people a lot more free time. Because what happens to the Elder is, they advance significantly, right? They're a massive multi-system, they half the galaxy before the fall. And they're so technologically advanced that they do not themselves have to work for any survival component. And what do? They turn to extreme hedonism. And it also condemns BDSM and stuff as well, which is, you know, stupid, bad and problematic and all of that. I'm not particularly interested myself, but members of the system are, and plenty of other people that we know in various ways are, and we would never condemn it. I would never condemn it. And people having fun between consenting adults, I'd see no problem with that. Even if I'm not interested myself, I'm not going to condemn other consenting adults for having fun in a safe, sensible way, in a reasonably safe and consenting way. Right. So, that's cool. But, although before the fall, what do? They gather on primarily on their home planet. Lots of them gather there, and they start having effectively massive parties of extreme excess. Well, excesses in food and excesses in food and sex and everything else, right? All the things that society condemns as negative to do too much, essentially. Right? Regardless of whether or not, yeah, sure, you can, obviously, not necessarily, but sure, yeah, there are ways to be excessive with these things, certainly. But is mostly simply because of resource limitations, right? It doesn't matter, and the limitation, doesn't really realistically. If we get to a point where we have practically infinite food, it doesn't matter how much people eat from that perspective, right? And if we get to the point where we can just replace organs freely and so on and so forth, right? It doesn't, if medical care gets to a certain point, right, in availability and capacity, where someone can eat themselves into this isn't this is not intended to be a condemnation of people who can't eat or anything else, right? Or who are naturally on the side or anything or any of that, right? But there are certain health complications associated with certain, especially certain eating habits, right? With certain types of excesses of certain components of foods, and so that is something that it's not to say people shouldn't eat what they like when they like, or any of that, right? Or eat what is available to them for survival, any of that, right? Or you shouldn't come to eat, or any of that, or or to say people should force themselves onto a diet. I don't agree with any of that, but there are certain health complications associated with certain, you know, with weight and with increased consumption of certain components of food. So, but if medicine gets to the point where you can just really, let's say, replace someone's heart, right? You know, then what does it matter? right? It's not really a burden on society. If it's not really a burden on society at that point, what does it matter that people are doing that? It doesn't. And so the whole condemnation of that whole thing is terrible because realistically, the Elder were at a point where that did not matter. None of that actually actively mattered or placed a burden upon the society, and yet they birthed the Chaos God from doing this. Which, if you don't know Warhammer, that's going to sound weird and wild, but suffice to say, they, through their excesses, which were not really excesses given where the society was, but through their perceived excess, they birthed a being of immense power and not pure evil, but primarily evil being of immense power, and ripped a massive hole in reality through which beings of chaos, i.e., mostly evil things of mostly an evil nature, despite the fact they are really just a reflection of all emotion, split up and feeling split up into, you know, four subsection. Well, five subsections really. You've got the four chaos gods and then the unaligned or other smaller party stuff. Right? It's the basic idea. And chaos have messed around with all sorts of things in Warhammer lore and done all sorts of nasty things. But yeah, and are pretty much exclusively painted as some of the evilest evil out that are in Warhammer world. Which, there's no good people there apart maybe from one subset of the Tau. Because the main Tau Empire is controlled by mind controlling, by people with mind control and with mind control essentially who are just brain wiping and mind controlling everyone else in their empire. And lying about the existence of certain things and so on and so forth, right? So the Tau Empire the main Tau Empire is also evil, even if they're not always that way, right? Basically everyone in Warhammer is evil, but Chaos are often portrayed as some of the most evil, apart from some of the Eldar, maybe. The Dark Eldar, or yeah. But regardless, the real thing is, Warhammer 40k provides an interesting strategic game, right? And a creative outlet in one, which is of interest to me. That's interesting and lore, although it's ridiculous and overblown and so often so silly. It's amusing, it's fun, right? It's so ridiculous and overblown that it becomes, in some ways, quite enjoyable. Um, it, yeah, so many problems with that, but that's not the point. no. Um, yeah. Um, I've also been looking into other things. Obviously, been for a bit. Mostly been seeing what other people have put onto my YouTube feed, and someone picked up some people took it Steam Trades recently, which has been cool. I've learning more about Steam Trades. It's been cool to have information on Steam Trades. And it's a lot of the system collectively having levels of interest in engineering and the mechanics of things, right? How things work. This is how things work mechanically, especially. Also, electrically is interesting as well. But they are, in many ways, very similar. Right? Electronics and mechanics are, in many ways, the same field. Not the same field, but they interlink closely. A lot of the understanding for one helps you understand the other. And but yeah, steam trains have been very interesting. It's been really interesting to learn about them as well. And other types of trains as well, but especially steam trains because those are the most mechanical in many ways. Right? Diesel electrics are, or electric trains are, have a large electronic component to them, which we do enough with electronics in but work. Learning about the mechanics side is far more interesting outside of work. Thank you. But yeah, it's been that. And it's been interesting as well to just engage somewhat with other people's interests and enjoyments within the system, and also when I'm not around to, just when I'm not fronting fully, to just be able to sort of loosely watch front and pick up some new information on things. Learn about things passively because most of the system are reasonably willing to engage with content. Especially when it's not the primary thing we're doing. If we're working, for example, right, and we've got YouTube on as a background thing, just because we need to be doing two things most of the time to focus properly on anything. So it's rather pleasant to be able to just sit, loosely watch front and pick up on whatever has been put on YouTube, and just learn some more about whatever, or got other people's opinions on something, or any number of other things. It's great. And luckily, most of the systems seem reasonably willing to, both allow me to engage from near front in things whilst they're doing something else, you know, in front primarily, or or to, do or to sit near front and keep a certain piece of content interesting whilst I'm focusing on something else primarily. It's great. I really like that capability and willingness. Anyway, I tend to be relatively calm. I'm being animated and budgeted for this because YouTube video thing, right, should be more presentable. I can be quite dour. I'm trying to be more positive, but it can be difficult. I miss people that we left behind, and I know why we left them behind, and I do recognise that we did need to leave them behind, but I still miss them. They weren't good people, really. I know they weren't good people, really, but they weren't even good to me. But I feel like they were. I feel like they were good to me. I can recognise that isn't true. I recognise that they weren't good to me and they weren't good to anyone else in the system either. But that's not how emotions work, right? I miss these people, and that's unfortunately deliberate, right? And I can recognise that looking back at things, right? This is a this is essentially part of our recontact programming, right? This is part of our TBMC stuff. I was a program to do for recontacting, right? To get back in touch with them. That's why I exist. That's why I have relatively positive memories of them, because I miss them is because they need people to do. Well, they don't need. But that's one of the. Yeah, watch the video on recontact programs for more details. But basically, right, if you've got members of the system who miss the abusers, it's those members of the system are going to be fun likely to push and be willing to push for recontact, right? Or may even, if they manage to get front exclusively, may even just go recontact by themselves, essentially, right? And reinitiate contact when it would be unhelpful to the system as a whole. Because what they see is, hold up, these people I miss aren't around anymore. Well, I'm going to get back in touch with them. Right? And that's kind of the whole idea there. Anyway, I think that's everything.
This system signing out. Hope to catch you all next week. Please do remember to like, subscribe, comment, especially if you've got any questions you want answered. Be happy to answer them either in the comments or in another video. So catch you all next week.